guys, Chapter 8, Section 8.2 is about multiplying and dividing rational expressions, and then at the end we'll talk about converting units. So at the beginning, we are going to refresh our memories that when we are multiplying fractions, we simply multiply the numerators and then we multiply the denominators. And that is true whether you're doing 1/2 times 3/4 or you're using expressions that have variables. So let's take a look at our first example. 4x cubed over 7x minus 1 times 3x plus 5 over 2x. It's important to think of those with operations of addition or subtraction as being grouped together. So you'll see in the next step they have parentheses here and here so that you remember that those are grouped together and the 3x cannot be canceled with anything else. It is grouped and you may not ungroup that. So looking down, what we do next is we write out 4x cubed is 2 times 2 times x times x times x times the parenthesis 3x plus 5. And then we have the parenthesis 7x minus 1 times 2x. So what that looks like as far as simplifying is these x's cancel to 1, this 2 and this 2 cancel to 1, leaving us 2x squared times the quantity 3x plus 5 all over 7x minus 1. To find the product and simplify our next example, we have the problem x squared minus 49 over 5x minus 10 times x squared minus 2x all over x squared minus 9x plus 14. We always want to start by factoring and get things in the most simple form. So x squared minus 49 is a difference of two perfect squares. So you have x minus 7x plus 7. We look at x squared minus 2x and we factor out an x. So we have x times the quantity x minus 2. 5x minus 10, we can factor out a 5 and we get x minus 2 right here. And x squared minus 9x plus 14, we're asking ourselves what two numbers multiply together to give you a positive 14 and add together to give you a negative 9. And that is x minus 7, x minus 2. So looking at our factors, which factors have the same in the numerator as the denominator? Well, we have x minus 2 in both, so that simplifies to 1. We have x minus 7 and x minus 7 in the numerator and denominator, so that also simplifies to 1, leaving us an x plus 7 in the numerator right here, leaving us a 5 and an x minus 2 in the denominator here. So that allows us to take this large problem at the top and simplify it down to something that's much more manageable. So just remember that when you're multiplying rational expressions, you multiply the numerators and the denominators, making sure that the denominators do not equal 0, and then simplify the result. So find the product of these two functions. F of x is equal to 35x squared minus 25x over x squared minus 36. And g of x is 6 minus x and 15x to the 4th. And when we find that and we combine those by multiplying them, product means multiplication, we will then evaluate it and substitute 2 in for x. So first, we need to simplify by by factoring and then eliminating common factors. 35x squared minus 25x. We always ask ourselves, is there a greatest common factor? And there is. There's the greatest common factor of 5x. So when we factor that out, we get 5x times 7x minus 5. We also want to reverse whenever we have this 6 minus x. We want the x to be the positive. So if we multiply by a negative 1, we get a negative 6 plus x, which can then be rewritten as x minus 6. Remember, all of that was times a negative 1. That's where this piece comes in right here. X squared minus 36 right here is a difference of two perfect squares. So we know that we can factor that into x minus 6, x plus 6. We also know that 15x to the fourth can be written as 3 times 5 times x to the fourth. Now, let's take a look at what we can simplify. If we have the exact same factor in the numerator as the denominator, it cancels to 1. So 5 and 5 cancel. We have x minus 6 and x minus 6 to cancel. We have one of these x's here, but we have 4 x's down here, so this now becomes x to the third. Don't forget we have this negative 1 here, so we won't want to lose that as we continue on. So, when you simplify, what was left in the numerator was the negative sign for a negative 1, x minus 7x minus 5, so that's represented here. We had an x plus 6, that's represented here. We have a 3 and an x cubed, and that is represented here. And that is why this all simplifies to a negative 7x minus 5 all over 3x cubed times the quantity x plus 6. Now, remember we were going to evaluate that when x is equal to 2. So we substitute 2 in for x, and then we find that it is equal to a negative 9 over 192, which simplifies further to a negative 3 over 64. So now that we have multiplication under our belt, let's take a look at dividing rational expressions. Looking here, remember when you have two fractions, you can convert them to a multiplication problem by taking the second fraction and finding the reciprocal. That is, what was in the denominator becomes in the numerator becomes in the denominator, and what was in the denominator becomes in the numerator. So if I had 1/2 divided by 3/4, I could change that into a multiplication problem by leaving the first fraction the same, changing the operation to multiplication, and flipping or finding the reciprocal of the second fraction. That is no different from simple fractions like 1/2 to 3/4 and more complicated fractions like these. So the problem starts out as a division problem. We are going to keep the first fraction identical. We are changing the operation to multiplication, and we are flipping the second so that the x plus 1 is in the numerator and the 4x to the 7th is in the denominator. Now, from this step forward, we are doing everything we just went over. We are factoring. We are crossing off like factors. X squared will become x to the 5th down here. And we have the quantity x plus 1 that we're not doing anything with, and we have the quantity x minus 3 that we're not doing anything with. So what is left in the numerator is a 3 and an x plus 1 in parentheses. What is left in the denominator is x minus 3 in parentheses, one of these 2's, and x to the 5th. That is represented right here. So this is just reminding you when you want to divide rational expressions, you write the quotient, the division problem as a multiplication problem, you find that product, and then you simplify. So let's take a look at this, and we will see that when you are given two separate functions and you want to divide them, you simply rewrite them as a division problem, then change it to a multiplication problem here, and start to factor here. Simplify by eliminating common factors that are common in the numerator and the denominator. And rewrite what is left here. Now, when you want to evaluate, we've been doing this all semester long. You substitute the 3 in for the x and simplify until you have the answer of -51/2. Now, the last part of the section has us talking about converting units. Now, you are all Google savvy, so you can look any of these conversions up, what an inch is to a centimeter, what feet are to inches, and so on. So you're welcome to use Google or any other resource, plus your book has a table like this as well. So the biggest thing is when we are converting and working with different units, we have to decide, well, what is our answer in? Is it in quarts, gallons, cups, days, years? What is it? So if there are 4 quarts in a gallon and 4 cups in a quart and 365 days in a year, convert multiply by ratios equal to 1 and arrange these ratios so the units we want to eliminate will be 1 in the numerator and 1 in the denominator. So just like we eliminate common factors, we eliminate common units. So we started out with 18.5 gallons in a year, and we want to get to cups per day. Well, we know there are 4 quarts in a gallon. So once we multiply by 4, we are talking about quarts in a year. There are 4 cups in 1 quart. So once we multiply by the second 4, we now know that we are in cups per year. We know that once we multiply 1 year is equal to 365 days, then we can cancel the year in the numerator with the year in the denominator to get cups per day. So take and multiply. Hang on, I'm trying to change the color of my ink. Multiply 18.5 times 4 times 4 times 1 and divide by 365, and you get approximately 0.81 cups per day. That is equivalent to 18.5 gallons per year. So just remember, the biggest thing is you always want to be able to cancel your units, 1 in the numerator, 1 in the denominator, until you end up with the units that you want. I hope this section is helpful in 8.2. Thank you very much, and you have a great day.